I suppose it's possible that the sight of a man coming against the justice system,
a
vote
billionaire
sympathy from some parts of the populace. I don't.
Who knows? It's been another explosive day at the Manhattan Criminal Court today, as Donald Trump's former fixer or consigliere, I think it was Dominic or Nick who noticed that the term consigliere normally is a mafioso lawyer. Remember that term got popularized back in the early 70s with The Godfather. Yes, indeed. Well, Michael Cohen has been described as that. He testified again against former President Trump in his hush money trial. And he was tasked with paying former porn star Stormy Daniels $130,000 to stay quiet about an affair with the Donald. And he detailed the scheme to the court as Mr. Trump looked on. So let's talk to Will Pavia, New York correspondent for The Times. Will, you've been in the courtroom today. So can you sum up how things went?
So I think this was a stronger day for Trump's defense team because they really took Cohen through all of the times that he has lied under oath in the past. So Cohen sort of maintains that while he was still trying to protect Donald Trump and while he was still sort of on his side, as it were, in this case, he lied to Congress and he lied to investigators from the Mueller inquiry who are looking at sort of possible collusion with Russia by the Trump campaign. And he eventually sort of came clean, as it were, and took a plea deal where he pleaded guilty to campaign finance violations in relation to this $130,000 payment that you mentioned. But he was also charged with tax evasion. And he now contends that he shouldn't have been charged with tax evasion. And so that essentially what Trump's lawyers were sort of saying is that you also sort of lied about that when you took responsibility for it before a judge when you pleaded guilty to it. So it was a very tangled record. It was at times quite confusing. We were going through all these different times when Cohen had lied in court. But Blanche sort of made the point, Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, made the point that, every time, you take the oath, it's always the same oath, and it's the same oath that you took in this court today, and yet you lied all those previous times.
But Will, how strong was his pushback?
Damaging.
Yeah, how strong was his pushback to say, look, I was a consigliere, I was the guy who was at his master's service, and I would do anything for the Donald. I would take a bullet for the Donald. How strongly did he assert that?
Well, he did. He was fairly successful in terms of lying to Congress. He sort of said, look, he said that I knew that I was lying. I worked with the Joint Defense Agreement and we crafted this document. So he said, in order to stay on message, the message that we all knew Mr. Trump wanted, including Mr. Trump's attorney at the time, he read this statement to Congress, which contained falsehoods. So I think on that, the jury would probably give him the benefit of the doubt. That seems as if he was sort of acting still in Trump's interests. I think what probably was more damaging was the sort of slight tangle regarding his guilty plea and then him sort of saying that he didn't think he should have been charged with it afterwards. And, when you take a plea before a U.S. judge, the judge asks, has anyone threatened or coerced you to plead guilty? Now, what Cohen said was, I was given 48 hours, I was charged with all these charges, and I was told that if I didn't take a plea, then I would face an 80-page indictment, which would also charge my wife. And so I did this to protect my family. So that was his point, I suppose, in response to this. I think the other kind of really sort of bit where Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, really came alive was when he was trying to get Cohen to talk about a phone call where he says that Trump approved the payment to Stormy Daniels. Cohen has sort of said that Trump approved it every step of the way. He was shown phone records showing he'd called President Trump. Now, what Blanche did is he showed Cohen text messages where Cohen had been texting about some harassing phone calls and text messages he'd been receiving. And what Blanche said was, look, you were actually talking to Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, about that harassment that you were suffering. And you couldn't possibly have spoken to Donald Trump in that tiny 1 minute and 36-second phone call about what you were doing for Stormy Daniels and, the payment. And he at some point he sort of shouted, that was a lie. And he was like waving his arms around. It was almost a sort of, a Few Good Men sort of type moment. Oh. Trump said that Cohen sort of said, I believe that I did talk to him. And he said, I don't want to hear about what you believe. I want to know the truth, You did not talk to President Trump that night. So that was quite dramatic. I think that was probably one of his strongest moments.
Right, right. And I thought today was Cohen's last day in the witness box, but apparently he's back in on Monday. I wonder what more remains for him to be cross-examined over.
This is a good question.
Because, I mean, they've put him through the mill, haven't they, the last few days?
They really have. Well, I think so. I think on Tuesday was just the afternoon, and I have to say a lot of us came away thinking, well, they didn't really land very many punches because Blanche sort of jumped about a bit. He didn't really kind of push Cohen on anything. Today was much stronger. I would suppose that there's going to be more. We're going to hear more sort of about his lies in court, and Blanche is going to try to tie it all together and say, you can't believe this man. You never know. He doesn't know when he's telling the truth and when he's telling a lie. He doesn't know what perjury is. There's a lot of those kinds of questions about, are you aware that you were lying then, and how can we trust you now? So I would assume that Blanche will tie it all together. It does seem as if he thinks that he'll be finished by lunchtime on Monday. So we've just got a few hours left, I think, of that.
Mm-hmm. And what was Trump's demeanor during all of this? Was he awake? Was he asleep? Was he meditating?
So, I mean, there were parts in the morning where he was doing a very good impression of a man who was asleep, but he did sort of seem a bit more engaged in the afternoon. And some people sort of commented on the fact that he walked into the courtroom with Blanche at his side, which was seen as a sort of thumbs up for his lead sort of lawyer. In the afternoon, when Cohen was being asked about recording journalists' phone conversations and text messages he'd had with various different journalists, Trump did seem to be sort of examining those exhibits and talking to his lawyers. So he seemed a bit more awake for that part of it.
Right. I'm just looking at this. Penny, one of our listeners, Will, has sent in this text. No matter whether Trump is guilty or innocent, millions are going to vote for the liar Trump. They must all be idiots. Well, but if you say that on the airwaves in the States, then you're treated as some kind of Hillary Clinton, out of touch, calling them a basket of deplorables. And people then say, Trump is real America. That's the instinct, isn't it?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's this theory at the moment that certainly on the sort of that Democrats are advancing, that the polling at the moment is not quite taking into account what will happen if there's a conviction.
Right.
And that there'll be voters who will say, who at the moment are very disposed to Trump, who are not quite following the cases closely enough, who might, if they see him convicted, be less willing to vote for him. We're not sure. We actually, obviously, we've never had this before, so we've no idea if that's true or not. He's certainly Trump seems to have certainly a plan for, if there's a hung jury, for instance, or he will certainly campaign on that as being a sort of total exoneration and a triumph. And I suppose if he's found guilty, he will say, look at me being sort of, this martyr. Doing all this
what he'll probably say is, hey, I'm black now. I've been persecuted. It's unfair. I'm now a black man. Vote for me, black. Hasn't he been trying that as well?
Well, to some extent. I mean, he's certainly got. I mean, his support among young black and Hispanic voters it seems pretty strong. It's in the recent sort of polls that they see him as a possible change candidate. Yeah. They're upset with Biden about inflation, the economy, and Gaza, and so they see Trump apparently as someone who might sort of bring a different sort of approach to things. And I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's possible that the sight of a man coming against the justice system,
a billionaire
from some parts of the populace. I don't.
Who knows? Will, we're going to talk about this again soon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us as Will Pavia, New York correspondent for The Times.